Hi, I'm Sarah Banwell, the editor of fundoperator.com, and I'm here with Eric Newman, a Treasury Manager and Trustee at the City of Stamford. Eric will be speaking at our institutional ESG conference in October, and ahead of that, we wanted to get a bit of a flavour of what he's going to be talking about. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you, Sarah. Great to be here.
Thanks. So my first question is, why is it so critical for ESG asset managers to practice the standards that they set for their investment targets?
Sure. For starters, as a trustee on the board, we're looking at the managers. When we make the investment, they're given a mandate or they're presenting a strategy to us, and we want to make sure it's being followed and being measured properly. Sometimes, you want to make sure that if you're saying you're an ESG or going to an ESG strategy, that's really being done. Sometimes things happen and your strategy might be delayed. But in the end, we want to have these measurements in place from our own performance. We might be measuring our own KPIs against ESG KPIs. And one of the issues sometimes we'll be looking at is board diversity. And you might have a board, only this past year in the S&P 500, we finally got the last company to become diversified. And then you have companies who are very diversified across gender, ratio balances, and they do very well. But then, they might not be adding new board seats this year. So it looks like, okay, there's no change. But then you have another board who went from having a very closed board to adding one individual, and all of a sudden you have a spike in their KPI. Look, they went from 0 to 100%, and so you got to watch out for those KPIs, and the issue of press release, we became very diversified, but in reality, you haven't really changed your past. It's just like you're at the beginning of the stage, so that we always take that into consideration when evaluating things in transactions.
Great, thank you. And what role can institutional investors play in ensuring that ESG asset managers practice those ESG standards into their own operations?
Sure. For starters, passing within their investment policies an ESG policy within it, depending on your structure. If you're a very large pension plan, a big state plan, obviously you're going making direct investments, and you do have impacts on boards, and you have more influence. Other times you might be a municipal government pension board, and you're going to be investing in more mutual funds, and obviously you're not necessarily going to have that influence of directing the Fidelities, the Vanguards, and boards into you're going this way, we want this thing. While many of them do have standards and a lot of research on it, and they're going in the right direction. When you go sometimes with a smaller manager or not necessarily the large ones who might not have the infrastructure at this point, you really want to have this in your policy. So when they meet with you and they know up front that this is going to be important, and adding them creates, builds on it. If you're one community that, even though you might not have a lot of influence, you're a small community, but you implement these strategies within your investment policy, then next year when another community is looking at their investment policy, they're going to say, this town or this city has done it, this community, we could do the same. And and you get the wording, and you get to larger institutions, they're going to have much more in-depth strategies on their policies, within their policies, and also holding the managers accountable. This is the belief that we have, the board, the direction the board wants. It takes time, and things don't happen overnight. ESG is a long-term strategy, and implementing it takes time. E is for the environment, and we know with the climate, it can't change. It's not going to change anytime soon. Others, you can make a significant impact much shorter. When it comes to governance, if you want to bring diversity to your boards, next round there are appointments or changes in the board that can be done pretty shortly and improve strategies from that aspect. And then you have the social impact. How's that going to impact? It buys down risk, as we're all experiencing it. Different places. Things are happening in the world, and do companies take a stance, or are they going to sit on the sidelines and say, "Oh, we're not going to take a position"? And that sometimes that's just not right, and it's that fine line, depending on where the management is, the leadership is, and they have to balance what their own customers are, and they go one way, they're going to have boycotts, and you don't want that because it destructs value of an organization. So but collectively, when moving things the right direction is good policy, good practices to create value, long-term growth, and improve outlooks. And as ships in the harbor rise, they rise together. So as one does well, everybody does well, and you have this economic growth that will continue, both domestically or internationally. And even looking at international, we look at internationally, parts of Europe are way advanced compared to the US on some of the measures. And you go to other parts of the world where other emerging markets, and they might be farther behind. And as managers or as institutional managers, we're deploying capital around the world, and building on one can add to another. So as it's easier once you have policies in place, meet with the manager, and they realize, okay, how do we get to that? If we want to get this particular institution's investment, we're going to need to change our policies and implement our own infrastructure.
Great, thank you. And the last one, what benefits can this accountability bring to the industry and all of the role players within it?
Just improves things. Brings more. The more diversity there is in the industry, improves outcomes. We all know that diverse boards, diverse organizations have better outcomes. It de-risks a lot of risk. You're going to have things that might have been done in the past at organizations that will not be tolerated going forward when you have leadership that's diversified, and that's a huge. Then going forward, and it just, the tone is set at the top. If the institutional investors who technically are the shareholders set a tone, management, their board, the underlying board is going to set the tone. The leadership of that organization will continue it, and it flows down. And as you integrate things cross outward, you're throughout the supply chain. You're going to put pressure on your vendors in their supply chain. You need to have these standards. You need to be doing this type of reporting back to us, because we have to, in a sense, report back up to our own owners or management. So yeah, it's a way to build on a snowball effect, where the more you push it out, the bigger it gets, and it's just going to drive changes much better going forward. And it buys down risk, it reduces risk, and as institutional investors, we're not necessarily looking for home run after home run. We want steady returns, because for public pension plans, we have retirees who want to have a guaranteed steady income that they don't need to worry about, the fluctuation, and we have obligations to meet these contractual obligations long out into the future, and with many public pension plans having discount rates that probably need to be adjusted. A lot of times there'll be unfunded liabilities, and reducing risk and improving returns closes the gap of the unfunded gap liabilities, and ensures the stability of the pension plans going forward.
Great, lovely. Well, I can't wait to hear more from you at the conference in October. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Sarah. Great to be here.